There it is, live from Serbia / Broomfield. What is up, everybody, and welcome into Serbian Corner, our weekend edition of the DNVR Nuggets podcast. I am your host today. I am Voja Medic. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. I'm Adam Matas, filling in for Voja, of course, but I am joined, as always, by the wise old sage of Serbia himself, Miroslav. Miroslav, it's good to see you, old friend.
Oh, absolutely. You too. Voya is actually right now bathing in the Atlantic Ocean in the Florida. He is on some kind of a bachelor party in a pool house, and F you Voya for that. So, but you're missing the real fun. This is where the real fun is.
Man, I'll be honest with you. Today will be interesting, but fun is like, I'm not sure. We're just going over the show notes, and there's some I'm excited to have these conversations, and I'm excited to talk about a lot of the things we're going to talk about. But, are the Nuggets fun right now? That's I guess a question that we could almost ask is like, are you having fun? And when I say now, I mean over this last, we'll say 2-week stretch.
Honestly, I feel that that the shows are more meaningful when the times are not great compared to when everything is roses. I think we have more takeaways every time Nuggets hit some sort of bump on the road, and right now they are hitting quite a lot of them regarding the team construction and also some in-game stuff as well, also the arena atmosphere as well. So yeah, we have a lot of things to catch up on.
Well, let's start with, we're going to get into a bunch of different things. I mean, the Serbian perspective on fans and comparing and contrasting Ball Arena to maybe some of the games you see in Belgrade or in Europe, which I'm sure will be a stark contrast. But I want to start just with last night's game because it was such an interesting one. I mean, my perspective on it, which I shared last night, Miroslav, was that I feel like that was maybe a top 7 performance from the Nuggets this year collectively, and it came in a home loss. What are some of your big takeaways from last night's loss to the Phoenix Suns?
They've played so well that I feel they should have won the game. I mean, if there weren't some strange decisions by the referees late in the fourth quarter, and also some overusing physicality from the Phoenix Suns side as well, I think Nuggets really had this game there. But man, when I see Mikal Bridges, I just love that guy, man. He's so sexy, and I mean in every possible way. I mean, that guy is pure bucket, pure smooth operator.
He is a smooth operator. I like that. He's definitely a smooth operator.
And the fact that I'm jealous about the Phoenix Suns is they actually sucked for so many years, and they've gathered so many high picks. So now this is why they have such great role players.
Yes and no. I don't know. Yes and no. It's true that they do have a lot of guys that have been high picks, but they have also found a lot of gems, in my opinion. They found a lot of guys that,
and also a couple of great veterans as well.
And some great veterans. But the interesting one to me that I look at when I look at the Phoenix Suns is, what would they look like right now if they had Luka Doncic? The entire roster and development would be different. Now, would they have won it anyway? Maybe. Or would they have been very good anyway? Probably, because Luka's that good that the margin for error gets wider. But it's funny to me that they could have both been wrong about Ayton being better than Luka. Luka's better than Ayton, but also right about like, hey, it fit sort of the other pieces that they had in tow. And now Ayton, what's impressive to me about him specifically is that he's such a great player, but so willing to only get 50% out of his most flashy parts in order to maximize everything else. So to me, I don't take away from them having high draft picks because I think they picked the right guys in those spots.
Yes, and some of those guys are really great culture builders, and I'm envious of some of the guys they have. For instance, I mean, Jay Crowder, man. Why can't Denver ever have a Jay Crowder on their roster? He's such a playoff player. He's so thick, so big, so switchy. I mean, Denver has just a lot of lean, light guys that cannot compare to him.
I will say I think Aaron Gordon is a bit of a Jay Crowder. I mean, Jay Crowder's like really thick. Like he's there's not a lot of guys his size that sort of move like that and can shoot like that. But I think Aaron Gordon is that guy, and Aaron Gordon was supposed to be in that role, basically, meaning he's supposed to be a guy you don't count on for anything other than that kind of stuff. So they have at least one.
Yeah, sure. And they have Jeff Green, who is 35, and I think this is where the list ends. Really, I mean, if you don't count on Jokić to be your thick guy in the middle. But other than that, I mean, I have so much love for our players, each one of them, and I see some glaring weaknesses, mostly in their body types, not in their basketball skill, because Nuggets have some really, really skilled players. But for instance, I mean, a couple of days ago, you said you're the biggest fan of Monte Morris in the world. And I have to tell you, no, man, Voja is. So stop with that. Voja specifically told me to tell you that live in program. But other than that, I mean, he only has one glaring weakness, and that's he cannot finish around the rim because he's so tiny. He does everything perfectly well, and then just gets swatted out down there. So yeah, we really miss Jamal for that. And Bones is kind of a hope in that regard. He is skinny, but he's so long. His long arms help him a lot on both sides of the court.
His closeouts, I mean, I've obviously talked about this on the list and even on the show, but his closeouts, I just am always surprised at how much ground he covers. And I think it's Mikal Bridges is like Bones if Bones was 6'8" or whatever Mikal Bridges is, because he's the same thing. Like he blocks. Who did he block yesterday where it was just like a jumper that got blocked right back to him? And you're like, man, you rarely see that, but he's so long, he covers ground.
Yeah. Could have been Bones, to be honest.
It might have been
Bones. Yeah.
Players just don't get blocked. Like Bol used to do this. Remember when he did it to JJ Redick, where like you're shooting a jumper and the shot gets blocked straight down, and you're like, wait, what?
From 15 feet away.
yeah, exactly. So I think Bones provides the requisite length. I do, and then like Michael Porter, he also. People always talk about like sort of the skill aspect of it, but the physical aspect of it, yes, he's so skinny, but the combined length of it, it's just. There is a world in which the Nuggets next year have one of the longer teams in the NBA, and it's just so weird to think about because when we're critiquing their team, they are lacking a lot of their length right now.
Yeah, and also they're lacking physicality. Even when you look at Porter, he has that nice hairstyle. He's always nice to everybody. I don't see the flame inside of him when he plays like some other guys do. So. Yeah,
the Suns have this collectively. I want to make this point though, Miroslav, because the Suns have this collectively, and I got this note from somebody and maybe a couple different people last night that were at the game, and they're like, the Suns just carry themselves like in warm-ups and everything. They carry themselves like, yeah, we're here, we're gonna beat you down, and like I don't care if you know it or don't. They just have this edge to them. This kind of FU to them. And like you saw the video of Booker dribbling. This wasn't against the Nuggets, but it was the game before where somebody says something to him and he says, shut up. And then just keeps playing. Like they have that sort of edge to them where they're there to be like, nobody gives a shit. Like you talk to us, you better be prepared for us to punch you in the mouth. And I don't know that the Nuggets are definitely lacking the requisite amount of that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I agree. They just got bullied. And I don't mind being a bully, to be honest, because my favorite team, Partizan Belgrade, they used to be the biggest bullies in the EuroLeague. They always lacked the pure quality because their teams were too young and didn't have a lot of foreign players. But they compensated that by beating up everybody. And at some point, the referees just have to stop calling every foul because there is not enough fouls to give in that kind of situation. So. Yeah, I think it is fair to see that you can get as bullied as they were yesterday night against the Phoenix, and they should be prepared for that for the playoffs for sure.
I mean, the Phoenix Suns. My fear is the Nuggets, having to match up with them in a playoff series because I thought, like I said, last night's effort from the Nuggets was an A effort, maybe not A+ because there were some sloppy turnovers or whatever, but it was just to me it was such a. If you said they were going to play 4 playoff games, would I expect more than 1 or 2 to be better than what they gave last night? Like, I don't think so. And that means you're probably having at least 2 games, if not more, where you play worse than that. And
very interesting. You just said that because a journalist of Voice of America, Braca Đorđević, got an exclusive interview with Nikola that will air on Serbian TV station N1 tomorrow. And I spoke to Braca about it, and he sent me some teasers. And in one extremely short video, Nikola says that a better team almost always win a match in the playoffs. You can steal 1 or 2 matches in a series, but that's it. There is no way a worse team will beat a better team in the playoff series. So I found that brutally honest answer, and I think he was referring to the Phoenix Suns series of last year for sure.
I mean, he is right about this, that when we have seen upsets, they've almost always been 7 or 6 games, where there's been an upset. It's very rare that you see a team that gets swept or wins in 5 games where you're like, man, the lesser team won that one. It's like, that just doesn't happen. Basketball is a game where, especially at the end of a playoff series, everybody kind of knows everybody. And now it's like, hey, who can do what? And outside of a player or team just outright choking things away, usually you just watch a game and you're like, yeah, that one team, they were significantly better than the other. And Denver right now, that's part of what's so hard about the season, is it's hard to talk yourself into that they are the better team. That they are, they would go into even a Memphis right now, which again, like, this is the thing about competition is, you always want to try, you always want to measure yourself, but there's just some of these teams, and Phoenix is certainly one of them, where you look at it and you go, yeah, that's tough, man. They have so many ways to beat you. They know exactly who they are. They've been building at this for 2 years, and Denver has sort of been sitting in this spot. I thought Devin Booker last night, we talked about this a little bit on the post-game show. He was going at Jokić, not necessarily trying to ISO him or anything like that, but he was going to score a big point total. I kept wondering why he played last night on a second night of a back-to-back for no reason. And I honestly think it was a statement game for him, saying like, hey, I don't want Jokić to be the MVP. And we're starting to see this. John Morant today, Isaiah Thomas, like, guys are starting to come out of the woodwork and start to say this, what feels very targeted specifically at Jokić himself, about they want him to be the MVP, and they're making up criteria for him. And it sucks, because I think Jokić is in the center of this sort of culture war for which he doesn't want to be, has no really participation in, and to be honest, probably doesn't even understand, but we're starting to see it. And last night, nobody's talked about it, but last night, I think Booker had a very specific reason for playing the way he did.
Yeah, and it's real funny if you look at Booker's numbers throughout the season. It's just, he is like the 10th most deserving guy to be an MVP this season. I mean, based on the team success, you can bump him up to like 7th, but not more than that. I mean, so many great performances we've seen, individual performances we've seen this season. I mean, if Luka didn't have a bullshit first two months of the season, he would be the MVP right now, because he's playing insanely since January. So it's just, I mean, great. Booker is scoring like 26.2 points per game. Jokić is scoring 26.1, and he has a field goal percentage that's 11% higher than Booker. So what gives? You want to look at the assists, the rebounds, the advanced metrics. It's crazy. I know it's nice to have a guy from a top seed being the best player, but realistically, how worse do you think the Phoenix Suns would be if Booker have missed like 50 games this season?
I mean, they probably still be the number 1 seed if nobody else missed or what have you. So you're right that it's marginal there. It's tough because on one hand, Booker has a point. The point is that for the longest time, we did have this criteria of top 2 teams in each conference, who's the top scorer on one of those teams. And you had to kind of pick between those 4 players. And that was a criteria. I think it's good that we've moved away from it, starting with Russell Westbrook's triple-double season, his MVP season in 2016. It's sort of opened things up now to being different than what they have been in the past, in a way that is good. So Booker is sort of one of the first players to just get no consideration when he has the number 1 record and he's the number 1 scorer. He's one of the first ones to just not even be in the conversation. And I think a lot of that is everybody understands the Suns are really good, to your point, and that they are not dependent on any one player, and all of the stats back that out. So he is pointing more to precedent to make a larger point that I think is unfair, but at least pointing to the precedent, he is correct that it used to be a different criteria. I'm going to respectfully disagree with Vote here. He says it's the foreigners, in my opinion, not just Jokić, even Giannis and Embiid. The tweets that have come out are about it used to be a top seed. Giannis and Embiid right now are 2 and 3 in the Eastern Conference. They are the top seed. So to me, they are not talking about Embiid or Giannis. Otherwise, they would have said something different. Those two teams are both in the top of their conference. So this is a very specific targeted at Jokić thing.
Yeah, it's really strange. I have never, ever seen a tweet against against Embiid outside of, Nuggets Twitter sphere. And he's not perceived as a foreign player because he actually played college in the US, and that makes a big difference for some reason in minds of people, that he's not as foreign as Giannis and Nikola is. And of course, I don't know, is he less goofy than Nikola and Giannis is? I mean,
he's like, it's weird. Don't you ever
he seems like a nice guy.
Who, Embiid?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, on interviews and everything.
He's super charming. I mean, he really does. He's charismatic, and it's funny that I'm always shocked at the crossover between NBA fans and wrestling fans. And Embiid he clearly has an understanding for the ways in which wrestling, pro wrestling and American marketing overlap. Because wrestling is almost like the American id. The American subconscious, right? It's just all narrative. It's all like we're selling things through conflict or this or that. And Embiid just seems to kind of understand that on this very this level. So to me, that's where it's a little bit different is he understands, and not even just understands, he cares about that thing more than the other two by leaps and bounds. So there's all these different layers to it. But my point is more that with Jokić, he kind of finds himself in this. And I don't know how I'm curious your take. Part of me, full disclosure, the Bontemps straw poll is coming out here very recently. I'm curious to see where everybody has all of these players. Part of me wonders, I almost don't want Jokić to win. Not the straw poll, the actual MVP. And I know that sounds weird, but part of me thinks that there's just going to be too many negative things that would come with that. And I don't think Jokić cares. That's the thing, is I don't think he's going to be bothered by not winning. But in winning, he probably is going to become more in a spotlight for things of which he has no interest in having to be in the spotlight for. So part of me kind of hopes he loses. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I know why you feel like that, because if they would, get thrown out of playoffs in first round after winning the second consecutive MVP, that would be like so much fuel for Nick Wright and such writers to write about him. And I agree about Nikola not caring too much about it. Another snippet I got from the interview that will air tomorrow is when Bratza asked him how does he feel about his games and team games so far in this season. He said, "Listen, man, I'm just trying to play the best I can. I don't know if I will be scoring 24 or 27 points per game. It doesn't matter. What does matter is me feeling that I'm doing the right things for my team, and I think I'm carrying the team so far well." And he's just 100% concentrated on that. And I think he also just shuts down after every game, and this is why sometimes you will get those underwhelming quotes from him on the post-game pressers. It's just I'm not even thinking about the game, man. I played bad or I played good, and then I'm going home now, and we'll have another game in 2 days, and that's all that matters. So yeah, it's not a great insight for me. I think it's just that I think he feels that winning MVP is nice, but of course the main goal will always be the championship.
I think it's underestimated how much he wants the respect. He wants that aspect of it. But I just think that he maybe sees, or maybe he doesn't, but he would see if he won a second time in the Nuggets. If he won a second time this year, next season would carry a unique amount of pressure and just conversations for which I think it would be unfair to place him in. Meaning he would have to account for, there's only been 7 two-time MVPs and they're all this or this. Why are you? It must be something about the way this structurally and institutionally that the voting works or this or that you got it because you clearly don't deserve it. And I just, again, I don't think he wants that distraction to follow him through the entirety of next season. So I don't know. Let's see how it plays. We'll see how all of this lies. I think he has the respect of most people, but we're starting to see some of these players speak up in ways that I think is kind of interesting. The other storyline that came out of last night's game, but it really came out of the Boston Celtics game, was just sort of, the crowd. And I know this happens every year, and every year we freak out about it. So maybe this is a non-story. I've had some people reach out to me and say, Adam, it's been like this for 10 years. It's not getting worse. It's not getting better. It's just the way it is. Maybe that's true. I don't know if there's a way to quantify it. It feels to me like the city of Denver has changed so much in that capacity in one direction. But when you see that as a Serbian, when you see Celtics fans chanting as loudly as they do for their guys at Ball Arena, and you see the Phoenix crowd behind the Phoenix bench the way they were, what's your perspective on it?
Okay, so let's start with this. Yesterday you had a tweet about things getting even worse from game to game in
more
Ball
year
Arena.
To year, but sure.
Or more year to year, getting worse in the Ball Arena. And Voja answered that with a small video of Red Star fans cheering for 20 minutes after the game is finished, in a game where Red Star lost by 20 points. So you have like 5,000 people still in the arena chanting and singing songs about their favorite club, even though they've lost hugely in that game. But what Voja couldn't say with that video is the same things applies to Red Star or Partizan games, even when they're playing away, because Serbia is different. You have two major clubs, something like Celtics and the Lakers, but it's even more unfair to the other clubs. This is why I so much love cheering for the Denver Nuggets, and I loved cheering for the Sacramento Kings back in the early 2000s. It's because we're complete underdogs, and the NBA is a kind of a league where you have the biggest possible chance of overcoming everything, being an underdog, because you have the salary cap, because you have all those rules put in place to give chance to smaller market teams to at least compete, if not win.
Right.
So one thing I saw in that Phoenix Suns game was, Boston fans mocking Nikola Jokić on the free throw line, calling him the MVP after, Boston was beating them by 20 points. And that's something that's, for me, completely unexcusable. Because even though, for instance, Partizan and Red Star have fans all over Serbia, and they will have more fans wherever they play than the home team, but nobody will try to insult the home team or home players, because those people fucking live in those cities. How can you mock the guys that play for your city? At least respect that. Okay, yeah, you should put your green flags up and cheer for Boston Celtics if you want to, but don't mock the local guys, because that's just, you have to get out on the street tomorrow. How can you do it like that? It's just crazy.
And there's like a healthy amount of like where fans, or where being a fan of sports matter. Like I know some people are like, Denver fans should, beat their ass or this or that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, we're not going to sit here and fight in the stands. Like we are a civilized.
Oh, you better not.
Yeah, like
that's what happens in Serbia.
Exactly. Or like, honestly, like it's really kind of, sports have to be contained in this space where it's like, hey, they're important and they matter to us, but they, like Eric always says, it's where you can place these tough human emotions in a place where it's safe and healthy. But it's a slippery slope between that and like dragging someone out in the causeway and beating them, or something like this, like that we obviously you want to avoid. But I think what you're getting at here is the most important thing, and it's an important thing about American culture, of which Colorado has become a sort of ground zero for this, which is, those people that come and mock Jokić in his arena, what they are doing is feeling a sense of community with their Celtic brethren here in the city of Denver. But it's inversely correlated to their camaraderie and connectedness to their city. So it's a weird thing where it used to be we're all in this together. Now Celtics fans and Lakers fans and Bulls fans almost have an even stronger community, but it's one that's disconnected from the broader community of which they exist. And to me, it is perfectly analogous to American culture in many ways, which is the same thing, fragmented and closer in subculture, but more broken and weaker in the larger culture.
Yeah, I agree. It's really complex. It's not something we can easily see anywhere in Europe, especially in Serbia, because everybody is kind of local there.
Right.
The whole of Serbia is as big as Colorado.
Right.
Couple of million more people than Colorado, but
It's like Colorado and Utah from a population standpoint, which is by American standards like meaningless. Nobody care. Like people say no, but when people talk about Colorado and Utah, they're like nobody lives there. It's the same population as all of Serbia.
Yeah, this is actually the reason why we are so proud of our basketball, because we know how few of us there are, and we still manage to. I've told you before about this, and I'm repeating myself, but it's still my biggest goal as a Nikola Jokić fan to see him overachieve Dirk Nowitzki. And it's not because I don't like Dirk Nowitzki. I actually hated Dirk Nowitzki back in his playing days because he was the only reason why Peja Stojakovic wasn't the best European player of all time by that time. And now I love him because he's so goofy and so great. But, it's just unfair that a guy from Germany that doesn't really have a great basketball tradition be the best international player of all time when you have such basketball nations like Serbia, like Lithuania, like some other.
When I was talking to Ethan Strauss on Wednesday, another show that I highly recommend people go back and check out, but one of the things we talked about was Shaq mentioning, I thought you were Russian, and the way that this was like a dropping the ball because of this point that you're talking about. It's not that he just got the countries wrong. It's that he missed why that's interesting. Right now, there is a huge Balkan influx that actually follows a very long and rich Balkan tradition about why, this is a place in the world that actually likes basketball as much, if not more, than people in the U.S. And that's a story that like Jokić and Luka provide a phenomenal opportunity to tell that story. And by the way, Shaquille O'Neal's rival for many of his best years in the Lakers was Vlade Divac. Like that's was an actual, how could he not know this when actually he went up against a guy who shares Jokic's heritage?
Vlade Divac was literally the only center of that time who knew how to play against Shaq because he was the master of flopping. And that's the only reason, because of course he wasn't strong enough to hold his ground, but he was flopping so well. He used to have those games where Shaq would just foul out after 25 minutes because Vlade would just beat him to it. So yeah, it's crazy. I mean, don't pretend you're dumber than you are. Come on, man, you can do better than that.
Shaq,
there are other kinds of comedy. I mean,
I know dumb comedy really is like my least favorite one. The like ignorant person's comedy. It's like my lowest, it's the lowest form. I can't do it. It just takes me too much. But the thing that I know, like Serbians are going to be so up in arms and are up in arms, and fairly so. I'm up in arms about it. Like to me, this is it's like a kind of an embarrassing thing about our city that it doesn't have that connectedness that through sports that most other cities do. But at the same time, Serbians have to understand that their entire country is the size of, like you said, Colorado, and there are all these other forces at play. It really would be more akin to, why are there so many Lakers and Celtics fans the same way there are Partisan and Red Star? I think that's a really salient point. It's just on a much bigger scale. We're talking about 300 million instead of 9 million.
How do you feel Ball Arena is greeting Derek White, for instance, like a local guy? Do you feel that there is more of a connectiveness to the local guy?
I mean, there certainly is, in terms of people like Chauncey was the ultimate one of this, right? Where people, because Chauncey was, Derek White is from the Springs, I believe, or he went to school down in the Springs, so it's a little bit different. Whereas Chauncey was from Park Hill, right there right by the DNVR bar, and then he went to Boulder, which is close to Denver. So he's in some ways feels a little more local. Also, he just was more famous. I mean, than Derek White was. He was a lot more popular even coming up. But Derek White, there's a little bit, but it's not like you notice. If you just went to Ball Arena with no context, you wouldn't be like, why are they all cheering for that guy on the other team?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Moving on now, another thing that happened that's interesting here for your perspective is Michael Malone. He gets the extension, and he gets it a few days after one of his most controversial moves as a head coach. He benched the starters coming out of timeout against the Boston Celtics. I will say one little caveat before I throw it to you. It was interesting hearing him in the pregame yesterday talk about, I felt a lot better after seeing that they did the same thing to Utah. Like, okay, good, we're not the only ones. And I wonder if that was like, there's a little perspective here of like, hey, maybe Celtics are just 20 points better than the Nuggets right now, and what happened was just the natural occurrence. But Michael Malone benched the starters. Does this stuff happen fairly regularly? Never? What's your perspective on that?
Okay, let me just get some groundwork on this. So first of all, if you're not a DNVR subscriber, just go there and subscribe, because Harrison wrote a great piece on this a couple of days ago, just after that Celtics game. And this takeaway about him benching the starters for the start of the second quarter, and some other takeaways from this game, just go and read it. It's a great piece of writing. So my first thought when I saw him putting 0 starters to begin the third quarter was, of course he did. What was he supposed to do down 25 at the half? The fact that this shocked so many people online is a result of malpractice the NBA has been doing for years. The head coach has very little control over his team, because everything is defined before the game. So the fact that when the team is having a surprisingly bad season, for instance, head coach usually is the first to take the fall. And how is that fair if the front office is not empowering the coach to do everything he needs to do in order to save the season? And luckily Denver Nuggets are not a bad team. They are like 12 games, 11 games above 500. So it's not that big of a deal, but they might fall into the play-in, and we expect Malone just to be a robot and just, make the regular rotations every time. And I will make a small movie analogy here. I believe it was Federico Fellini who said that if the main role in his film is being portrayed by a vegetable seller at the green market in real life, if this guy would suck at being the lead role, that would be the director's fault. Because he is a director. Everything is up to him. So what I want to say here is, don't make the head coach be the babysitter to his millionaire players. Let him concentrate on motivation and tactical stuff, and not worry about a guy being pissed off for starting off the bench. I mean, I know you'll say this is completely unrealistic in today's NBA, because the player have a way of forcing themselves not only away from the team, but also toward the team of their desire. And that is because there isn't enough camaraderie among players in the team. And I'm not talking about the Nuggets here, but the NBA in general. My solution here would be to incentivize winning. So if a guy, first of all, there is no starters and there is no bench. That's bullshit. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can have a different starting lineup for every game based on the opponent. Why? I mean, George Karl says that. This is why I love the podcast you have with George, because we can hear what the coach actually thinks. And why do you care if you're starting or not? If you're closing the game, if you're playing 35 minutes per game, why do you care about starting? And, if you would incentivize winning, like, let's say the team that finishes number 1 in the seeding get like $20 million, prize for that. Why not? I mean, why do we hate the regular season so much? Why do we make it so meaningless? Because, in the East right now, there is a possibility that the Brooklyn Nets will be 7th or 8th at the end, and they can knock out the number 1 seed. Is because they just didn't have, all the horses during the season, and now they will probably have it, or almost all of them. They will not have Joe Harris, I guess. But, and there is no reward for the guys that were sweating throughout the season. And, if you incentivize it like that, guys wouldn't care so much about the role. They would care about winning more and getting that reward at the end of the season. Well, I at least I hope so.
I mean, here's what's so fascinating about sports, though, is I think that they really do weave in and out. Like, part of why the NBA is the way that it is because it is an American sport. Like, it hails from American culture. It's an American league, I should say. People are going to correct me and say, actually, it was a Canadian that invented it, Dr. Naismith. But it's by all intents and purposes an American sport and an American league, and it was structured in ways that had heavy American influences. And so there is this way of like the league is reflecting culture in a lot of ways. But I don't. Here's my fear, Miroslav, with what you're pitching here about these like built-in incentives. Players and front offices and everybody has sort of perfected figuring out ways around the system. It's a real problem here. It's not so much the rules the NBA has in place. It's that all these people are finding out ways around it. Whether it's, do I actually need to show up and play? Can I still get paid under these loopholes, even if I'm doing the bare minimum? Like, there's all these things. And so part of me thinks, like, you start building in these incentives, and what are some of the ripple effects that you get that are maybe have unintended consequences? So I'm almost opposed to putting in some of these extra little things here, because it's just more ways for people to game the system.
Okay, I have one more hot take to fire away.
Hold on, before you get there though, Miroslav, I want to pull, because you actually said something even more interesting.
Oh, sorry.
When you were talking about Fellini. And I'm going to use another director actually as a reference, the Coen brothers. I'm a movie guy, so now you opened up a whole can of worms here. The Coen brothers, I've worked with some great actors. And one of the things that actors will say is that there's very little freedom in the role, right? Because as to your point, they are auteurs. They have control. They are making the movie that they have in their head, and they got the people, and they were going to perform the way we tell you. So it is like an actor will make a creative choice, and the director will say, cut. This is actually how we want you to say it. Like, and they'll change, like they'll tell the actor. There are other directors though, who are way different, who say, you know, I write the script, or so-and-so writes the script, or I take it. But once we start filming, it's a collaborative effort where it's not, I have a vision, but I have to be open to the fact that everybody has a vision, and it's the confluence of that. And there are different styles of filmmaking, and there's some great filmmakers that are examples of both. I think it applies perfectly to coaching, and that there are some coaches that it's like, no, I tell everybody how to do it, and you give me the grade of this or that. And then there's some that are, this is a collaborative thing. And while I have my take, Jokić has his take, and Barton has his take, and hopefully through leadership, we can blend those together to make the perfect movie. But it's a philosophical difference that I think is successful both ways.
And this is why I actually think Michael Malone is 95 percentile of a perfect coach for the Denver Nuggets. The fact that he doesn't put his hands too much in the offensive scheme when Nikola is playing. Of course, he will make his life easier by doing this and that, but at the end, he will just let him do the play calling. And when you see the timeout, we have now the microphones on top of coaches during timeouts. You can hear him just being a motivational speaker. He's not calling any plays at all. And that's shocking to me, because, you know, when you see European coaches, they're just, you know, writing like crazy on those little dashboards they have, just trying to get the most out of the next ATO or whatever. And he's just cool about it, and he's of course thinking about defense and stuff. And one thing I was thinking about head coaches not having a lot of power over their teams is them lacking the authority is the reason that the 30 NBA head coaches are not actually the best 30 coaches in the world. You have 98% of best players in your league, but you don't have 98% best coaches in the league. And, you know, you have guys like Pop, like Spo, like Nurse, Monty Williams, Tyronn Lue. They're for sure top 10 coaches in the world. No questions asked. But, you know, there are some great NCAA coaches, EuroLeague coaches, national team coaches who would be extremely good in the NBA environment if they would get the power over the team, if they would be able.
Yeah, but that's part of the challenge, I think, about the NBA. What makes it a unique challenge? Because I agree with you when you think about this solely as the strategic element of it, but it's not just a strategic one. There's a social element to it that's actually extremely strong and powerful. And that's why coaching at the NBA level, to me, is the hardest thing. Because it's the same, by the way, of college coaches. There's some really great college minds. And you always think Could they make the leap to the NBA? And it's like, I don't know, because the X's and O's strategic aspect of it is maybe 30% of the job.
Yeah, and they need to win every press conference if they want to live in the NBA. That's just annoying to me. I mean, I know it gives great content to us, so that's good. I mean, it's the whole industry. I always say this: NBA is not a sport competition; it's a multinational company. It's just a company that generates revenue. It has nothing to do with sports. Sports is like a backdrop to the NBA. Everything else is just making money. So yeah, I get it. I hate it, and I get it. But I'm always thinking about what would happen if Magic and Bird didn't save the NBA back in the 80s. What if the NBA just bankrupted? How would the basketball look right now? What would be the main leagues all around the world? Because I always listen to Serbian fans talking about FIFA, the World Football International Association. I mean soccer, but that's football is how the rest of the world calls it. So FIFA has so much power over players that all the best players in the world always play for the national teams, because all the clubs need to let players play there. But that's only because soccer doesn't have the NBA, doesn't have their own NBA, because Americans don't really care about soccer that much, and this is why football is still surviving. But in international basketball waters, NBA is really on top of the food chain for sure.
Here's another question you have, another topic that's interesting. You just asked, what are the odds we get a net positive version of Jamal or Porter this season? I think the odds are pretty low for Jamal. Porter, yeah. I just have no idea. I mean, there's been so much radio silence. He could be back tomorrow. I don't know. Like part of me is sitting here just waiting for that news to drop about, oh, did you hear like Michael Porter upgraded to questionable? But part of me also, if we find out tomorrow that he's ruled out for the year, would not be surprised in the least. So we're in this weird spot where I don't know. But before we get to the what will you get, facing the reality that you might not get a Jamal Murray, I remember when Michael Malone talked about when Jamal Murray went down, he went to coach and he said, man, are you guys going to trade me now? Like he was afraid of that. And Malone laughed and said this and kind of said, whatever, we're not going to trade you. I sit here now and I think Jokić is about to go 2 seasons that might be fully wasted in the middle of his prime, or at the start of his prime. And I sit here and think, everybody expected Jamal to be back this year. The fact that he might not, and now you have 2 seasons, MVP seasons of Jokić that might go down the drain. Part of me goes, maybe they should have. Like, I love Jamal Murray. This is not a personal thing. I love the version of the Nuggets that would have Jamal Murray. But I sit here and go, if Jokić is left out to dry 2 years in a row, maybe it was worth trying to say, hey, Bradley Beal, bring him in. He's not as good long-term as Jokić, but you know what? You don't waste anything.
2 years ago, the pandemic was like in 2 months there, and the NBA was kind of looking to get back, and you had George Karl on your show, but the day before that he just tweeted like, the Denver Nuggets will never win a championship if they don't make risks. They need to bring a floor general like CP3 in order to win it all.
Yeah.
And I remember Alec Gwynn responded to that tweet with, nobody asked you, George. And I laughed so hard. It was such a funny response, the funniest I've ever seen on Twitter. And then he came to your show and he made his case about the CP3 and completely turned me around. It was amazing to me. And then a couple of days later, you had me on the show and asked me what I think about the CP3 coming to Denver. And remember, CP3 was back then playing for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they traded him for like Rubio and a pick, almost nothing. And I went all the way saying, I mean, I regretted it afterwards because the bubble happened. But I said I would trade Jamal for CP3 right now. This is how much I believe in what George is saying. And, in hindsight, we would probably be preparing for our second Larry O'Brien right now if we had a healthy CP3. Of course, you never know how those things go. So Ah, I just don't know. I don't know, man. It's so tough, and I came to the point, and I wasn't at this point like 3 days ago, but things are moving really fast right now as we are approaching April right now, and I came to the position right now where and everybody will forgive me for this. I hope Jamal will not return this season
Oh
after
man.
everything that happened, because two things. Okay, you have that huge risk that he's not ready either physically or mentally. But there's another part. We know who Jamal is. Jamal was never an all-star player by now, and this is his sixth season. Of course, it's not fair because he's missed a whole year now. He is not the all-star player because he's a very inconsistent regular season player who thrives in the playoff environment. But the problem here is he doesn't have 4 months of ramping up to get to the playoff shape. And what is the probability of him being in even like what does it mean 80% of shape anyway? I mean,
I know. It really is. It's actually more binary than people think.
that's
Yeah, this
right.
idea of
It's
you got
very
80%,
binary.
really like, can he or
Yeah.
can't he?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the question.
If
So,
he cannot make any separation on his jumpers, then he's done. He's not
yeah.
a very quick player. He needs all that footwork, all that beautiful technique he has in order to get separation, because he's neither big or fast, no,
Right.
or quick. So yeah, at this point, regarding Jamal, I'm hoping he doesn't return, because he would mess up the chemistry, even though everybody loves him there, I'm sure, especially Nikola. I think he thinks of Jamal as of his younger brother. He never had. So, but if you look at the playing, I mean, if you put him on the bench, maybe, But who do you replace right now? With an unhealthy, let's say unprepared Jamal on the bench. Who do you replace right now?
Bryn Forbes, I guess. I mean, I know he's not playing. Like, he didn't play
He's
last
not
night
really.
anyway.
He's not really in the rotation. Yeah.
Bones still plays. Austin Rivers still plays. Boogie still plays. Jermichael Green still plays. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's where it is you just end up with 3 guards, with Austin Rivers being your small forward off the bench. But then the question becomes, if Michael Porter's also back, then are you taking Jeff Green out of the rotation as well? Like, it's really tough. And I honestly, part of me wonders, again, I think we're late in the game. I'm with you that I just have lost hope of it being a positive impact anything. So even if they do come back, I just worry that it would be a bad thing. And I also sit here and think, like, that
I
does
think
mean,
Porter is a bit different story, to be honest. Not
why is
completely
that?
the same. Like, because he never felt like being in a top shape, to be honest. I mean, he was never 100% on the same page with the other
Right.
teammates, and he was
No
still
question.
contributing.
Yeah.
He's just so talented at being 6'11" and shooting 45% for the three and getting rebounds if he's playing a power forward. So you can really plug him in if he's ready and get like good 20 minutes out of him.
Here's why I think it's
Probably.
important, though, Miroslav, and part of me, and why I still lean that I want both of them to come back, assuming that they're, they don't want them to get injured. So if it's like, hey, they're not healthy enough, then what can you do? But if they are, if it's just mental, if it's just, like, hey, there's not really a risk of re-injury, but we don't know if the season's worth it. It doesn't matter. Bring them back for this reason. I think everybody on this roster has to feel the pain of not making it all the way, or make it all the way, and then you don't have to feel it. But short of that, I think they all need to feel it. And if Michael Porter and Jamal Murray don't play and this team loses and gets swept in the first round, I'll always wonder, do they feel the same pain that Jokić feels, that Barton feels, that all of these guys feel from, hey, we came up short in a way that was, that stung, that hurt, and that made it this, that. And I don't. So to me, that's part of what I need. And I just feel like with Jamal in particular, Jokić and Jamal, I think, grew pretty close in the bubble. And you heard Jokić say, I honestly believe he's a superstar. He has his back. He said all of these things. Part of me feels that, again, I don't know if Jamal's healthy enough or not for this. But if he is, I do feel like he kind of needs to have Jokic's back in a way of like, I can't give you much, but I want to be there so that you know that your failure is also my failure, not this, I'll come back next year to save you. I didn't feel any of this. So just a little bit of skin in the game.
Yeah, you got a good point there. I mean, I cannot argue with that. They really should feel like a part of this team. And I mean, who else have $60 million, in a civil suit, except for the Clippers, who are like
Right.
in the
Yep.
same shit like the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah. That's
So
very
and
true.
and their best player is not playing like 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 Denver Nuggets does have. It's really tough. It's hard conversation to have. I don't like having it right now, but this is where we are. Like 3 days ago, you know what I would say 3 days ago? I would say I am 20% confident Jamal is coming back, and I am 20% confident he will be playing well.
Mm.
So when you multiply zero point 0.2 by zero point 0.2, you get 4% of good Jamal. But 4% is not nothing.
That's
Right
true.
now, right now, I don't feel even that much.
I mean, there's a real part of me that believes Jamal is the type of player that he just needs one game like last night. I mean, he needs more than that. There's a ramp up period, no question. But say you got into a playoffs and game one, he's terrible. Game two, he's terrible. Game three, it gets into his contentious. They're playing John Morant, who's barking at him and saying this or that. And just something is like, it clicks back for him. It snaps back into this. That's right. So much of this is mental. And F that guy. I'm not letting him get me. And that's what you need. Like, honestly, they need less of his creation and more of just his sort of shot making and spirit. And if he could just provide that, it would provide something to this team.
Yeah, a week ago, I was speaking to Voja, of course, in this same place, and I said that the Eurobasket is coming in September, and I think Nikola wants to play there. And I don't want to hear a single voice from Denver saying they're not content about Nikola wasting half of his summer after this season.
Oh my
Do
god,
you
I
feel
love
me,
it.
man?
I
Do you
love it.
feel me?
The bill is coming due for the Colorado side of this. Yeah, the Serbians have had to pay the bill so far, but now
That's
you're
right.
right. Nuggets fans have to pay the bill this September. I like it.
So clip this and put it, in October when the season
I,
starts.
I can't wait till right before I go to Serbia in August. I completely turn the country against me when it's announced Jokić will play, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm a little worried he's tired. And then everyone's, don't you even step foot on our
No,
country.
no, you won't say that. I
all
won't
of my
let you.
food is spitting the entire trip. I just keep finding, oh, what's this? What's this? Um, no, I'm kidding. Thank you for that prep. Uh, the last part of this conversation, Miroslav, we got about 7 minutes left, 6 minutes left. You have a good question on here. The Serbian angle on how to play the right way. What is that? What does it mean?
Well, a couple of days ago, I saw some kind of discussion online about how and I will use this ugly term because I saw it, how the foreign fans view the right way of playing compared to how Americans view the right way of playing, and those are two completely different things. And I couldn't agree less with that, because I mean there is only really one way of playing correctly, and that's the way of winning the game. And if you have the players capable of playing the beautiful game, you should play the beautiful game, because this will give you the best chance of winning. And if you have strong ISO players that
So
can
true.
get separation in every possession possible, like DeRozan, or earlier Jordan. I've compared DeRozan to Jordan before. Then of course you will go that way. But saying that there is a better playing than a beautiful game, or better playing than ISO game, is just stupid. It just depends on who do you play, and frankly, who is your coach as well, because coach needs to be ready to implement certain things to accommodate his superstars. And I hate the term superstars, to be completely honest. I have this crazy situation with my mind for the last 7 years, because Jokić really is a superstar, and we have always been taught that there is no such thing as superstar. The team is a superstar. So you have Serbs in the uh, in the social media screaming that Jokić needs to get more possessions, deciding there should be no possession at all where he doesn't touch the ball and such things. And back home, you are taught that everybody needs to be involved because this is the hardest thing to guard. So it's a difficult thing for me, but I've been watching all kinds of basketball for so many years that now I can confidently say you should play the style that will benefit your result and also benefit the rules, to be completely honest, because there is so much rules exploitation all the way in the NBA today, to the lesser extent in Europe as well. But the NBA is the league that was always trying to make a better product that will be better for viewing, and this is why the NBA was always, well, they're trying to. I'm not saying they're doing it, because they've made several mistakes there, but they are trying to change the rules very often. And if you look at the FIBA basketball, the rules have changed so just in cosmetic way. Like, we don't play 2 times 20 minutes anymore. We now play 4 times 10 minutes, and the possession is no longer 30 seconds; it's 24 seconds. But that's more or less the same since 1986, when we got the 3-point line. Everything was almost the same since then. And in the NBA, you will always have those little perks, those little things that will help CP3 and James Harden, and the other guys just exploit them. And so kudos to them, honestly.
But this is part of what you're getting at. It's funny because all of these conversations we've had all week on this channel, on this feed, have been connected in a few ways. And what I think you're getting at here is the beauty of basketball, especially in this era, especially as it goes more global, is that there's so many different ways to approach it. And they all have their merits and they all have their weaknesses. And I think when you think about the ideal of FIFA soccer, World Cup soccer, is that it's very obvious what a Brazilian style soccer team is versus an English style soccer team, or German, or what have you. And there's these cool different styles and traditions, and then you put them to the test and you say, this year, which one is better? Because the players, because the culture, because this or that. What's great about the US over the last 30 years and opening up the gates to all of these other interpretations of basketball is you get these different things. And then the question comes, can you melt all of that together? Can a guy from Baltimore and a guy from Serbia and a guy from Canada and a guy from San Jose, can they all come together and blend their different lessons and strategies and come up with their own unique sort of philosophy? And let's put that up against a guy from Greece and a guy from, all these other different places, and they blend together. And now we get this blended philosophy. And to me, that's what's great. You're right. There's a lot of ways to win. The 2014 Spurs are almost nothing like the 2013 Miami Heat. They're so different. Right. And both teams got to win, in back-to-back years, each team got to win. And that should have been the proof of it. So to me, that, and when we talk about the NBA failing to tell the right stories, to me, that is the story. That's an eternal story that you could tell about basketball, that the NBA has sort of thrown away for, to your point, this idea of like making it a one, the one player, one thing. This is the right way. Real hoopers, that's the right way, or this or that, when it's always the confluence and how those things come together.
It's beautiful. I mean, if you think about it, when we look at those records from the old NBA before the merger, you had only local guys, only guys from the US, and some of them were not really professionals. They were accountants by day and then basketball players by night. So you need to see those records from back then, why some other guys could have played for 48.5 minutes per game for like 7 seasons in a row, like Will Chamberlain. It's because he didn't have to play against a guy from Russia, against a guy from Yugoslavia, again, because the competition was so much smaller. And there was this perception that even then the best players in the world were all playing in the NBA, and that's so far from the truth, as we can see right now.
Right. Well, this was another great hour of conversation, Miroslav. This was fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I come to Serbia, I have a feeling we're going to be up till like 4 a.m. having conversations like this that last 7 or 8 hours, and it'll probably happen every single day. So I've already told everybody our 8-day trip or whatever it is that's going to be out there is going to be the most exhausting 8 days of our lives.
Oh yeah, and I hope everybody will be able to come home alive, because some of you might just kill each other. When I see you arguing, on Twitter, it's all in good. But after 8 days of nothing but your colleagues, it's gonna suck for some time.
We might have to have you take over the podcast for like 3 weeks while we all decompress and go our separate ways.
No problem. No problem.
Everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. Always great spending this hour with you guys. We are off until tomorrow when we have our party bus. So everybody that's coming to the party bus tomorrow, we're going to be there at 2:00. We'll be there drinking beers, having and just hanging out with everybody, trying to get to know everybody. So if you want to come by at 3, 4, 5 o'clock, whatever it is, stop by. And if you're not on the party bus, you can still stop by and be part of the fun. We look forward to seeing everybody then. Adios.